Hey, wishing y'all well and welcome to this. I finally finished up this future-focused discussion on one of my absolute favorite games, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. I love my platform fighters, and this one's my favorite. I love the roster, the stages, the speed, the impact. It's so flashy. You got your teams, your sports mode. I really like critical KOs where people just blow up. The online's great. I love being able to rematch right away. I love the music. The items are really fun. The voices. I love what this game's got so far. And I'm excited for this hopeful franchise's future. So how about we discuss some of the possible future content we could get from this franchise? I draw pretty sloppy, but I drew some pictures to hopefully get some ideas across too. To start, I'd like to consider characters and stages series by series, then later get into modes and stuff. Everything will be timestamped, so feel free to skip wherever you want. For this part, I've got a few limits, like keeping my chatting to stuff I like more or have more to say on. Like yeah, the Gets and Rocket Power seem nice, they could get in the game and skate around. And that's it, I got nothing else to say on that. I'm also personally just not interested in any live action options, and I'm gonna stay away from Nick Jr. too. I love Blue's Clues, maybe that put me on the path of like Scooby-Doo and Ace Attorney mystery stuff, but fighting Blue? Maybe, maybe not. I'm also gonna stick to what I think are first parties, which just means Nickelodeon owns the copyright, and that makes things smoother, I guess. The devs have said they're open to third party, and great. I'm down for someone from Splatoon. Get Shrek, get Goku in there, get Ryu or anyone from Undertale. I just already got so much to say on content that fit these restrictions, so I'll focus on this, and maybe I'll give more thought to other stuff later. Also, I love variants. Variants for characters or stages too. Slap City does a great job with these, like you got the fancy ruins at daytime and the fancy ruins at night. This layout with a desert vibe can be a sweet winter wonderland. Stage variations offer fun new environments without having to rework layout or blast zones. Similar with character variants, or echoes or bonuses or clones, whatever you want to call them. I love this, when a character is similar enough to another one that they get to join without needing all the work of a brand new character. Like in Slap City, you have characters with their own win poses, dialogue, or different roles and stories. Like how Asha's story features SonsaKay going rogue like she did in their original game and being a main antagonist for him. Or Jenny Cat firing boomerangs instead of axes like Jenny Fox. Or Frolin, who started development as a variant of Princess Remedy before becoming more individualized, who now has two variants of her own, Nuna, also from the Princess Remedy series, and Bees from Psycard. They all have the same moveset but bring their own unique personalities and history, shown in their different win quotes which reflect their unique relationships with or impressions of the other characters on the roster. And cosmetic changes like Bees throwing cards instead of pills, or Frolin pummeling grabbed opponents with a box of chocolates while Nuna jabs them with a needle. Some of my favorite characters in Smasher variants, like Daisy, Dark Samus, and Richter. With a fraction of the work that characters with new movesets take, the family gets bigger. The more the merrier, so in this next section I will definitely bring up stage and character variant ideas when they make sense. Starting with the Spongebob series, there are plenty of characters from here that could be lots of fun. Pearl could make for an interesting big heavy character. Not even really that big, like 2 SpongeBobs tall, not so big that she'd have to be uncharacteristically sized down. She pretty often slams around breaking through doors or floors. It could be pretty fun to have a couple moves where you throw her weight around. She also often does cheer routines she could use, and she does also unfortunately cry a lot. It's like one of her most often done things, but that crying is shown to be really powerful. At this point, she seemed to be able to like harness her tears as like a laser. More often than not though, it's these 2 big streams on either side, and I think that would be a really cool down special. She could cry these 2 pillars of tears, and if you hold it, she could keep doing it, and she could move around while doing this too. It could be a fun, chaotic option in free-for-alls, and a great edgeguard. She could also use her blowhole as an upstrong, sniping people way high up, kinda like Asha in Slap City. There's a lot of fun things she could do, and I think she's a really great option. You also got Larry the Lobster. Could be fun to build a character mainly around working out. Like a weightlifting upstrong or overhead tricep extension for the up tilt. I imagine if you keep doing these buttons, you get to continue the animation and do slow but steady reps of each workout. And Larry could also bring some other stuff to his kit, like volleyballing or lifeguarding. He could have some kind of life preserver grab, and this style of resuscitation looks like a down strong to me. He could do some pull-ups when hanging from the ledge, lift a disc weight as a shield for his block animation. He could do some crunches for his crouch animation, which could lead into a bicycle kick down tilt. He's not a huge priority in my opinion, but it's still fun to consider him as an option and think of what workouts would make fun moves. Even Fred the Fish works well to me. Fred the Fish started as an unnamed reused background character without continuity, but after a while he became the My Leg guy, basically given credit and identity for every My Leg gag in the show. As I think many people have pointed out, his entrance animation could be rev up those fryers, and I'm thinking he could do some kicks that hurt the opponent and himself too as he shouts My Leg. And this thing he does with SpongeBob's balloon actually looks like it could be a great command grab where he stuns you and sends you drifting away for a bit. And he's got other appearances to pull from too, like when he sang the Jellyfish Jelly song or mopped up at a nursing home, which could have super armor because of just how absolutely unbothered he was here. And then of course you've also got Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and Plankton. Along with the characters we already have in, these guys seem to be the most important in the series and the most popular. And I think they all have some interesting potential. Mr. Krabs can use those big meaty claws for some real damage. He's like surprisingly strong. He could also poke, swipe, and spin again with a swordfish skull, and he's known for defiling that grave. That's a pretty popular picture. So he could hit you with a shovel or maybe some dirt that flies behind too. He's also been known to fish. Having a fishing pole move could be fun. Could pull off some cheap edge guards with that. Speaking of cheap, that's probably what he's best known for. Mr. Krabs loves his money. I'm thinking there should be some kind of money mechanic, which wouldn't be new for Ludosity, which I guess it hasn't come up in this video yet, but Ludosity are the makers of Slap City, as well as the gameplay for Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. In Slap City, business casual man could make money and cash it out for stronger hits. Mr. Krabs seems more the type to hoard the money, but maybe Mr. Krabs can make money the more damage he deals, and by reaching certain thresholds, he gets access to stronger moves. But he loses money as he takes damage, and when he loses a stock, it's back to where he started. Some powered up moves could be the fishing pole upgrading to reeling in the Moby Dollar, slapping anyone nearby and shooting little coins around. And he could have an upstrong where his eyes turn into the shape of a dollar sign, and when powered up, his eyes turn into 14 karat gold instead. This system wouldn't have to power everything up, maybe just some specials and strong attacks. I think he should probably always have access to a simple penny pinching downlight poke. A system like this, where the more damage he gives, the better, the rich get richer, I think it'd be a cool way to translate Mr. Krabs, but there are plenty of ways you could translate the fun potential this guy could bring. Either way, imagining Mr. Krabs in a fighting game and hypothetical complaints of him being too cheap, I think that's funny. Plankton is a very fun little guy, but thinking of how best to translate him to a fighting game sure is tricky. Plankton is small. If you stay true to that, then he's probably going to be annoying to fight. Simple jabs would fly right over him and there'd probably be a lot of dropped combos. So do you put him in a mech? In lots of situations, Plankton brings a mech, like in Lights, Camera, Pants. There, every character had to play the same as it was just party mini-games. That would solve one problem, but I'd also feel like we'd lost something unique. Yeah, a mech moveset could still be unique and interesting, but not many characters are as small as Plankton, and it's an important part of him. I kinda don't want to lose it. Him, like, running under attacks that others can't is interesting to me. He's had smaller mechs, but that doesn't really feel right to me either. That's more for sneakiness. He brings the big guns for more combative situations. An option I've seen thrown around is having him ride around on Karen. I like her. I like how expressive she's gotten, so I am down to see her on the battlefield. I am down for this option. But when I think of them as a team, I still want to be able to hop off Karen and run around as little Plankton, shooting rays and doing his own little thing while Karen offers backup somewhere else on stage. I also don't want it to be just like shooting rays from atop her while she does everything else. I feel like then you're just playing as Karen with a Plankton assist. I think Plankton and Karen could be a really fun duo, and a lot of people, including myself, would be happy with that option. But like Plankton's concept in Super Brawl 2, I kinda worry we'd be missing out on what makes me unique just for the sake of sizing him up. I think I want to see what Karen and him can do on their own, personally. Plankton has also, in a fighting game before, used his robot imitation of Mr. Krabs. It is an option here to have Plankton join as this robotic variant of Mr. Krabs, reusing Mr. Krabs' moveset. This would be in character, as this robotic imitation would be doing its best to copy an existing fighter, but I would only recommend this convenient option if there was no time or resources to develop Plankton with a fun moveset of his own. I guess my personal favorite option, what I keep circling back to, is the Globs of Doom route, where they just sized him up a bit. With a sized up but still small Plankton, I guess his weight and fall speed would be close enough to Zim's, who you can totally hit in combo. And he could use all sorts of inventions like his rocket tank, sonic cannon, or mechanical arm. He could use his Shiakazing trick to hurt himself and you. And I think I would really love this missile move from his Globs of Doom DS appearance. So how that worked is that he would jump, and then he'd make this missile platform that would go on to crash into stuff while he went around and jumped some more. You couldn't make another missile if the last platform you were on was a missile, so that already seems balanced enough for me. Other characters could ride it too. It's a super fun move, and I think it would translate great here in Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. Moving on to Squidward, I think Squidward's potential came really naturally to a lot of people. Like, yup, recover with the reef blower, show off the artistry with paints, and for the mid-strong, give the opponent a free pizza. He's known for being a grumpy guy, and his head does actually steam a lot, so a fiery multi-hit uplight feels appropriate, and as a natural progression, his upstrong could be a Captain Magma eruption. And the neutral special could totally be his clarinet. It could be like the item where he could move around and shoot random knockback notes, but not as fast and strong as the item, because the item is amazing. I like Squidward a lot, it would be great to see him. And with some cosmetic changes, I think Squilliam could be a good variant for him. Squidward's moveset should be all the way Squidward and not compromise anything so that Squilliam feels more in character sharing the moveset, but I also imagine Squilliam using the reef blower or shooting paints, feeling not that out of character as long as he puts on a smug impression as he does those things. It's kind of in character to copy Squidward, but with an attitude of like, no, this is how it's done. And there could be some cosmetic changes, such as slamming the opponent with a fancy painting instead of a pizza, and then yeah, I personally see no issues that make him feel like he couldn't work. There are so many interesting options from this series, but I think I'd like to see most of the ones discussed here so far first. For stages, of course nothing is required, but I was honestly a bit surprised when SpongeBob's Neighborhood didn't show up as a stage in the base game, and I would really like to see it added in the future. It's one of the most iconic Nickelodeon settings. So much has happened here on Con Street. Home to Patrick, Squidward, and SpongeBob, a fight between them and anyone else in the game here to a great remix of Grass Skirt Chase would be pretty perfect. The layout seems pretty fun. There's some stuff to bounce off of. Squidward's house at center stage happens to be the highest point, so it creates a bit of a divide. You could try to hide down here, or behind the leaves on top of SpongeBob's pineapple, and laugh as the other players hopefully forget about you and damage each other so you can swoop in for an easy win. Not really how I like to play, but I know some of y'all enjoy that. This could be a fun and heartwarming casual stage with music like Tomfoolery or Jellyfish Jam's Stadium Rave A. It could have alternate versions too, like tragically betraying that homey feel for an apocalyptic one, as was done in the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water. Maintaining the same layout while drastically changing the look and feel could make those silly hiding moments feel less cheeky and more desperate for survival. Or the neighborhood could get snowy and festive. I love my snow. Thinking of this version, I keep imagining a day where I shovel snow, have nice chats, maybe bake cookies, and play with friends or alone before bed on this stage. It just seems so cozy and reminds me of how I got Nicktoons Unite and Attack of the Toybots as gifts around the holidays. I was real excited and I'm still very thankful. So yeah, I think this would be a really cozy and fun version of an already cozy and fun stage. Both day and night snow would be great, but for this one I'm leaning toward night so you really see the decoration lights shine. Besides, for daytime snow I'd love a snowy variation of Jellyfish Fields. A version of one of my favorite stages with my favorite weather, I'd love that. And on this aesthetic loop around, another apocalyptic feeling stage could be Planktopolis from the first SpongeBob movie. A bleak, desolate empire, Bikini Bottom destroyed and rebuilt in Plankton's honor. The Krusty Krab is another pretty iconic Nickelodeon setting I was surprised wasn't in the base game. I really like the stages we got, and I can see how this one may be awkward. Fighting indoors you have to think about how much of a floor do we have, ceiling, are we doing walls, how do blast zones work here? It could be a walk-off or anything really. I ended up drawing one possibility that sort of ignored what would make more sense for the Krusty Krab as a restaurant, as some space floating above with half the floor caved in, so fighters could still get KO'd off the bottom. You could have some customers eating in the back and enjoying your fight, and some platforms that look like the tables could float around for fighters to use. There could also be stage hazards of different Plankton inventions trying to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, or a swarm of anchovies making the bottom of the screen even more dangerous, kind of like in SpongeBob's first episode. I think this could be fun, and I'd love to hear remixes of the Rake Hornpipe and Drunken Sailor while clocking in for another shift on a stage here. For variants, I imagine the fancy 5-star Krusty Krab to be a very different but also very fun vibe to play around in, as well as the Cuddly Crab, with stuffed animals all around. I'm sure there are other variations to play around with, but I think those two are my personal favorites. Sandy's tree dome is pretty. Big tree and a dome in the ocean, it's great. In my head I see it as a simple walk-off, but Ma was saying this picnic table could be a platform and we chatted like, oh, maybe one of Sandy's inventions shrunk the fighters. So the picnic table is the stage, and the benches on the other side could be platforms. This way the dome is spaced out enough so you can actually have blast zones. Bumping into the dome could be fun too though. However this stage would work, I think it would be pretty to look at and pretty fun to play on. I'd love an autumn variant too. I feel like there aren't a lot of autumn stages in games I play, but autumn is so pretty. I haven't seen every episode, but the only Sandy tree dome in autumn I can find, the leaves already fell. So I tried to draw what I thought her dome could look like with autumn vibes, and I think it'd be really fun. I did find Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry goofing around here in the winter version of this place, and I think that could make for a nice variation too. The Chum Bucket Laboratory is another cool possible place. Fun laboratory vibes with old Plankton inventions as potential hazards. Maybe Goo Lagoon could be fun. Not too many opportunities to play around with an undersea beach, and I would like a beach stage. Rock Bottom's got potential. Alien deep sea vibes, spooky music, and bouncing people off the steep wall a bunch. Maybe some buses come by and drive up it, hitting opponents in the way too. Ooh, maybe that street with Weenie Hut Juniors and the Salty Spittoon on each side. The right side with Salty Spittoon could be really hazardous and launch you right over to Weenie Hut Juniors, and you could make fun of your buddies for cowering over on the Weenie Hut side of the stage while you prove how tough you are parrying all the hazards on the salty side. There's also the doodle dimension. This could basically be like Slap City's whiteboard stage, a white void where things are drawn and brought to life. Bounce pads could appear to jump on, rocks could rain from the ceiling, Doodlebob could show up and join the fight for a bit. Anything could happen. For some Las Vegas vibes, there could be a stage based on the lost city of Atlantic City. It's a flashy party place with casinos, red carpet, neon lights. There's plenty to work with to make a high-energy party stage. SpongeBob's upcoming Cosmic Shake showed off a prehistoric kelp forest, and it's cool. There's lava and dinosaur bones and Venus flytraps that act as platforms, but bite, meaning you shouldn't stay on them too long. From one of SpongeBob's first big adventures, a stage based on the final fight in Battle for Bikini Bottom could be incredible. Having to deal with opponents while this giant mechanical SpongeBob in the back attacks everyone, swiping, chopping, and that music making the stakes feel that much higher. But, like in the original game, SpongeBob Steel Pants would have some weak points. He could leave his glove on a platform and you could hit the weak point there. He could lean in for karate and you could hit the weak point on his nose. Hitting, I don't know, 3 of these weak points could lead him to break down and fall over on you and your opponents, transitioning into the other part of the fight where you're inside him. Platforms spread all over this big place. You could have your last desperate struggle here. You could control when the transition happens too. If you and your opponents like the first part of the stage better, just don't go after SpongeBob's weak points. If you like the second part better, then y'all could rush to get him. Lastly for SpongeBob Stages, the Bubble Bowl stage at the end of Band Geeks where Sweet Victory triumphantly blared. That would be a really cool stage. I remember when I was younger, my neighbors and classmates, everyone I knew agreed that this moment meant a lot to us, and I bet if I asked today they would say it still holds up. I know I still tear up at it. I love imagining some huge tournament audience singing Sweet Victory along to an amazing grand finals finale here on this stage. The Avatar series also has a lot to offer. Katara specializes in waterbending, which lets her glide around or surround, encase, and freeze opponents. She can set up ice platforms, manipulate plants, and heal people. I think Katara could be really cool and fun. Avatar Kyoshi's another cool option. She used these cool golden fans to fight and could even bend lava. Non-benders like Sokka with his boomerang or Asami with those zappy gloves are cool too. Personally, I got all I wanted with my favorites Korra and Toph, so like, I'm good. But Azula could be a cool fiery villain, also capable of shooting lightning. Her brother Zuko could also shoot fire, and from what I hear can at least redirect lightning, so yeah, you could have some lightning moves. I guess these two could be variants of each other, but if you want to differentiate them, which does feel right to do, Azula can be a glass cannon risk-reward type with attacks that are more ferocious but leave more openings, while Zuko's are more disciplined, not as overwhelming, but reliable. Plus he can bring swords. For stages, it could be cool to see Zuko and Azula and anyone in the game fight where they had that duel and the song Last Agni Kai played. It could have a cool heavy atmosphere for anyone to fight in, whether you and your buddies are throwing items at each other, or if you want to see like Leonardo versus Shredder, or Zuko versus Azula. Who wins once and for all? The Northern Water Tribe is also so pretty. Its adaptation of the Kart Racer series has some fun ideas that could be put to use here too. If you like metal caverns, then Avatar's Crystal Catacombs could be the place for you. And thanks, Cows, for reminding me that Republic City has plenty of potential too. These sleek buildings, bustling life around. Ideally, I'd like to ride along a platform and tour all around this gorgeous place, see Bolin and Mako cheering the fight on, and pass over the glistening water to see the city and that Aang statue in the back. For Loud House stuff, first of all, I think Clyde would work great as a variant for Lincoln. Can't think of why he wouldn't. Neither him or Lincoln yo-yo that much in the show, so hey, Clyde can yo-yo here too. Cosmetically, instead of dressing up as Ace Savvy like Lincoln does for his up special, Clyde would dress up as One-Eyed Jack. Other than that little visual change, it'd be the same move. And while Clyde has helped change Lily before, you could replace the diaper and the strong up air with something like a book. It's not that the diaper move would be out of character for him, this change would just show off a different part of his character, how he's more studious. Another fighter you could bring in is Ronnie Ann. She likes wrestling, skateboarding, and started out as a bully, so you could do some stuff with that, like some command grab wedgie. Lin Lao Jr. is also interesting. Being like the ultimate athlete gets me thinking of making every move some kind of sport, how she'd dash around, or how even her block animation could have her pumped ready to catch your attack with a baseball mitt ready. Luna Loud could rock out, launching you with sound waves from her guitar or slamming it directly on you. While I guess she'd mainly use her guitar, her entire moveset could be full of instruments, playing the drums, clapping you with cymbals, or tooting with trumpets. Maybe as a taunt she could have a mic drop that actually counts as a little projectile. And her girlfriend Sam Sharp could use her own guitar and work as a variant. I don't think she plays as many instruments, but she's the same size, she plays some, so I don't think it would be that out of character to share this one-man band moveset. Lenny Loud could be so fun. Focused on fashion, she could have a jab combo where she strikes different poses, and some of her moveset could make use of stuff like beauty products. She could accidentally bump into opponents as she brushes her hair, or put out a constant hitbox as she blow-dries it. She could try to take a selfie but accidentally take a photo the wrong way, hitting opponents, or she could spray some perfume at you, hitting you with a bunch of little hits. I imagine that hitting like Eliana's steam in Ravels of Aether. And maybe she could charge it to cover a big part of the stage, inspired by the time she used bug spray to cover the whole kitchen. Lenny could also make use of her card-themed alter ego, the 11 of Hearts, to slap people from afar with this scarf, or use it to tether and swing around. I think Lenny Loud could be a really fun fighter. I'd personally love to try out a fashion-focused moveset that gives players new ways to knock opponents out in style. Get it? See what I did? Speaking of which, I also love the potential Luann Loud brings. I've heard of joke characters, but this is ridiculous. She's all about comedy and has fought in one of those old Flash Brawl games. She used stuff like a rubber chicken and her squirt flower, and it got me imagining a whole moveset full of comedic props. A lot of move ideas came from how brutal she gets on April Fool's Day. Most days she just makes puns the others groan at. On April Fool's, the others desperately just try to survive. No matter how they try, Luann remains a huge threat. Luann sets up so many traps, so many merciless pranks. Look at how Lincoln begs for mercy and she just sits on her throne unbothered. I would love for her to bring that energy here to the fight. She could set up these same traps along the stage, like a bag of flour dangling from some boards in midair. Anyone that bumps into it or gets kicked into it could be stunned for a bit as if they lost a rock-paper-scissors exchange. She could also set up jack-in-the-boxes or those classic springy boxing gloves. Besides the prank setup, she's got her unicycle she could dash attack with, she could manipulate her opponents and surroundings by miming, she can work with balloons, like making balloon animals, and she could recover back to the stage with a whoopee cushion. So much fun stuff. She could juggle you by literally juggling. I think she'd be terrific, an ultimate comedian character with a playstyle built around setups and punchlines. That's perfect. Personally, I think I'd be cool with any of the Loud sisters. They all have cool potential. Trying out new potions and controlling the weather with Lisa, making some plumber moveset with Lana, pageanting with Lola. Maybe Lana and Lola could be teamed up as a duo with the moveset mixing both. It's all great. And while this is more of a joke than a real suggestion, it feels too perfect not to mention. One of Slap City's most popular characters is this guy named Fishbungeon. He's like a muscular fish duck guy. I wondered about him or any other of Slap City's cool characters guesting in this game, but if not, then a sorta cheeky way to go about that could possibly be through the Loud House character, Musclefish. He is a muscular fish guy who could, hypothetically, do some of Fishbungeon's moves. This is all very silly, and sure, Larry could reasonably do some Fishbungeon moves too, but just felt like I should at least throw this out there. Anyway, the Loud House looks amazing with the Halloween decorations they put on it. This would be a festive, spooky, and adorable variation I'd love a lot. Dairyland's another option. We already have one theme park stage, but you could make another theme park stage different enough for sure. Instead of a Ferris wheel and roller coaster, this one could primarily feature one of those swinging boats or teacups or bumper cars. At Dairyland, their bumper car attraction is called Bumper Cows. They've also got the Tunnel of Butter, Uddertorium, a calf price gift shop. There's plenty to work with. With all the puns, general upbeat attitude, and how she was on the Dairyland side in the episode Intense Debate, I could see this working as a stage for Luann if we continue to pair characters and stages together. There's also the Loud Castle from their movie. You could fight in the foyer or on the roof. You could get a dragon in there, or a ghost too. Lastly, for music, I really like the Loud House theme, so having it or a remix of it available on the Loud House stages would be really cool. I also really like the song Ordinary Me from the movie, so I really recommend that if it could be added in the future too. For TMNT, I guess Raphael and Donatello someday maybe, and moving on. It's basically what I said in old scripts. I'm not much of a Teenage Turtles person, but nah, there's some stuff here. There are many distinct versions of these turtles, and now that I've got more of an impression, while I think our current 1987 versions have pretty sprites and their recent game Shredder's Revenge, I think the most stylish and interesting are easily the most recent. The Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versions. Their designs and personalities are more interesting to me, and they have more interesting moveset potential. Like Rise, Leo, and Mikey, for example. They can do everything the current 1987 versions can do, but in addition, Leo's got portal powers. It's sick, he's so flashy with this. I would love to kick people into one portal and get ready to hit him again as they burst out the other one. And Mikey gets stuff like fire and grappling with his magic chain. This would be so fun here in Nick Brawl. I would definitely, moving forward, build these versions as the main versions in the game. Ideally, you somehow get as many versions as costumes or variants as you can, and for Leo and Mikey at least, this does seem possible. It may be out of character for 1987 Leo to strike poses or portal around, which Rise Leo's moveset may call for, but it's not out of the question. You could build different versions as different characters, maybe even semi-clones to save some work and time, because yeah, I also want Squidward and others in the game before we get 10 turtles, but if we have to pick one version, I'm gonna say the Rise version for every turtle. They're just so good. Rise April's cool too. Even though she is leaning a bit more into news reporting, she does it differently, her proportions don't match 1987 April, and it would be great to give her a new moveset that shows off her other creative skills anyway. The April we already have is fun, and we could just have one in the future, but they're distinct, they're both fun. There's no rule, we could have two Aprils. Then, as far as I understand, the 2003 version of Shredder is the biggest fan favorite, so maybe that becomes the main Shredder. Proportions look the same, so maybe the current 1987 Shredder can be a variant. Lastly, a buddy recommended Casey Jones, and he does look pretty neat in that new Shredder's Revenge, so if we want a guy in a ski mask swinging golf clubs, This guy ain't a bad option. I would love to see the Mystic Library as a stage. That place is fantastic. Libraries already give cool vibes, and this one's got bookshelves floating around and stairs at confusing angles, all in that neat Rise art style. Bellerophon's also cool. Saw this section in Shredder's Revenge. You got tech and vegetation meeting here, you got that pink sky in the background, and you could naturally port some of the music from the game here, like Roof Running Reptiles or Technodrome Redux. Now for Zim Stuff. Zim brought Gur, but Gur could still be his own character. Personally, I like where he's at as part of Zim's moveset, but sure, the goofy little guy could wear that cute dog outfit and throw pancakes around. While Gaz or Professor Membrane could also be cool, personally, I'll just cut to the chase. I think Dib is the most interesting possibility. Not only am I more invested in the personal relationships Dib could have with other characters, like paranormally investigating Danny Phantom or trying to expose the turtles as real mutants, I also think his supernatural investigating could make for some fun moves you wouldn't see on other characters. I imagine for some simple light attacks he could swing his briefcase around, and for some moves he could open it and point to evidence of the paranormal, demanding his opponents believe him. He could also raise the dead as he has apparently done before according to his dad, reading some spellbook which summons a zombie that grabs and stuns characters. Or he could put on headphones to listen to space and hear a comet about to fall on stage, which the player could control, deciding where to land. He could also, as he did in Globs of Doom DS, cross these wires for zaps and shoot bolts of electricity. Zim could also have a variant, Tak and our little robot Mimi filling in for Gur. Tak has a history of having her life get kind of ruined by Zim's carelessness. She came to Earth for her revenge, and Zim and Dib actually had to team up to stop her. She's a bit taller than Zim, so we could size her down a little bit, but she can also walk around with spider legs, I guess use some other stunning trap besides a garden gnome, like some generic Urkin orb, probably swing some orb instead of Zim's moose too, and yeah, then I think she could work perfectly fine. Suddenly a Zim Ditto can now be a rematch, 20 years in the making. Super Brawl Universe has a pretty cool Zim stage, looks to be a control room. Feels like a more secret area, high stakes, buttons around here could have huge consequences. Maybe the fight here is the only thing momentarily stopping the world from being destroyed. This would be my personal priority for a new stage from this series. There's also maybe fighting outside the Membrane household, Dib's house. His house is pretty neat, and I'm kind of interested in a more public feeling Zim stage since the one we have right now is so isolated. For fans of isolation though, this series could also offer up a room with a moose. I think this stage would be a room with a moose. I ended older scripts of this video with Jenny because she was my most wanted DLC character. I also mentioned other characters from my life as a teenage robot, but didn't discuss them because I felt like we'll get there when we get there, just hoping to get Jenny first. Well, very much thankfully, we're here. So how about some more options from this series? Immediately, I think Vexus. She's the main antagonist, the robot queen of the robot planet Cluster Prime, intent on recruiting Jenny and ruling all life. For being as bossy as she is, it would be cool to see her call some drones on stage to help do some dirty work. I'm thinking something like how King Dedede's Waddle Dees and Waddle Doos would wander around and brawl. It was fun, and it'd make Vexus feel more like a boss as opponents would feel outnumbered. She can also fly with her roach wings, spray some yucky gas, shoot beams or grapple people from afar with her staff, stun people with snookums, and she's often seen teleporting with these portals. She uses them a lot to make getaways, but has been shown to use them for sneak attacks too. We already talked about portals a bit, but another way to use them could be Vexus sets one up, and then she can go do stuff for a bit, and then when she wants to, she can make a new portal to directly teleport to the one she set up earlier. Pretty much like how Arcane from Rivals of Aether would work to some water he set up earlier, but in the air too. Vexus could also use her portals just aesthetically, like for a unique strong dash attack where she flies, warps, and surprises opponents by getting to them much sooner as she warps a set distance ahead to reach them. And maybe, if it's not too overpowered, I don't think it is, if she held strafe during this, she'd fly in the other direction when she came out of the portal for a tricky, villainous mix-up. Overall, a bossy evil robot roach queen bringing henchmen to the fight, warping around and making sure you aren't safe up close or from afar. Vexus would make a really cool fighter. Other fighters include any of the Team, they could all be fun, but Misty ended up being the most important. It said if the series continued, her role would have expanded. Some of what we saw with her was turning into mist, messing with people's heads, kicking and flipping with all sorts of kung fu, and stunning people by knowing all the right pressure points. She's not my first priority, but she's a neat option. We also got Jenny's sisters, XJ1 through 8. My personal favorites are XJ4 and XJ8. XJ8 could be a big, strong, heavy character, and XJ4 is all about cleaning. You could make a whole moveset just out of that. Actually, I did. Her shape makes for some fun animation ideas. With her 4 arms, she could do a lot of gestures at the same time. For her moves, I tried to use a different cleaning tool for each one. So her jab could be jutting out a rag at you, and if you hold it, she could rub around like how she did to Brad. Her light neutral air spraying air freshener could also be held, spinning around and working kinda like when you hold Bayonetta's up air in Smash. Light down air, some sweeps below, kinda like Master Ruby's. Then I imagine the light up air to be a simple swipe with a mop that also shoots out these little water droplets, and the droplets do really tiny knockback, but that opens the door for rare but funny stuff to happen. For her neutral strong, she'd water spritz you quickly 4 times, 1 hit for each of her arms. For her down strong, I see her shape-shifting a bit and slamming down part of her that's become an ironing board. And it could be a cute thing to be able to cancel the animation whenever, but if you leave her alone, an animation where she irons with 2 arms and folds laundry with the other 2 just keeps going. Her up special could have her helicopter around by spinning a broom like she's done before, or she could just fly a bit. She is capable of flight, they all are. For her neutral special, she could use a hose, and for her down special, she could shoot out scrubbing bubbles like she wished to be upgraded with that do really little hits that might juggle you in place a bit, like Orcane's bubbles. Her air down strong could have her fly in a V-shape like she did when helping to repair a dam. Her grab could be a bit unique by vacuuming up the opponent, still working the same way, throwing people up, down, forward, but not holding them over her head for other opponents to snatch up or whatever other rare situations. For her win post, she could get a call from her sisters congratulating her, and for her taunt, she could offer the opponent deodorant, cause they stink. I guess everything else on this graphic should be self-explanatory enough. All in all, XG4 could be cool. For more possible teenage robot stages, my mind first goes to Cluster Prime. They have robot citizens walking around, mechanical alien buildings all over, advertisements, a pinkish sky, and these neat trees that emit waves as sort of a substitute for leaves. I tried to draw some idea of a stage for it, fighting on a roof with stuff in the back. I'm not sure I did a good job, but robotic ats, robotic civilians, and those neat trees, those are the notes I'd want to hit. There's also Vexus's palace. That could be an imposing area with tapestries of Vexus and plenty of gold. You could also fight Vexus right in her ship, with her crew of drones panicking or cheering the fight on, and screens on the sides displaying all sorts of different possibly changing things. The Danny Phantom series has a lot to offer. Immediately, my personal most wanted character from this series is Vlad Plasmius. He's the main antagonist of the show. He has a neat vampire design with matching gloves and boots, fangs, red eyes, devil horn hair, and he's got years of experience with his ghost powers that would be great to see in a game like this. These experienced powers, I do want them to be good, but you don't want them to be too good. Like, he shoots a lot of rays, and I think he should do that here, but straightforward's probably too good, so maybe diagonal. Seems more situational, but still looks cool and fun. I'm thinking on the ground you input down special and he shoots diagonally up, and then in the air you do it and he shoots diagonally down. And it doesn't have to be a super strong hit either, more of a disruption. Kinda like Kazuya's beam. You could also send a more normal blast straight ahead for a neutral special or light neutral air, and if it's left alone long enough it can burst into smaller blasts going in different directions. These little ones wouldn't be devastating on their own, but I imagine you could use them creatively, like hitting weird angles or getting a regrab thanks to them. For his recovery, I'm thinking he flies where he wants, including through the stage. He's a villain, he cheats, and he's definitely strong enough for this. Danny didn't end up doing it, alright, they probably didn't have the time, and he does go through a little bit for his get-up attack and victory pose, but they're ghosts in a platform fighter. I don't want to sound too demanding, but this is a neat opportunity. I want to see him go through stuff. I think I understand that this could cause glitches, but I think if during an up special animation you touch a surface that has another side to come out on, you enter an animation you don't control, and you regain control once your character gets to the other side, and that should hopefully mitigate most issues. But then you probably have to revisit every stage and program what surface is traversable like that, so yeah, that is a lot of work. If they have the time, I do think it would be super cool, and hypothetically, ideally, I do really want to see him play around with this, but if it is too much, understandable. As a backup idea, Vlad could let that magical map of the Ghost Zone carry him. Then for mid-strong, we've seen him use these screens. Maybe he could set one up ahead of him and it can act like Urien from Street Fighter's Aegis Reflector. Not lasting too long, but you could hypothetically, if your opponent falls for it, set one up, wave dash to the other side, and set up another, getting your opponent to bounce between them for a little like how Urien does. Should be pretty fun with a fair amount of weaknesses. This wouldn't be a kill move on its own typically, and he wouldn't be able to do it in the air since it's a grounded move. For his down strong, Vlad could go intangible and into the ground, popping out somewhere else you decide. His place on stage could be indicated by a shadow with red eyes, and using this he could avoid long hits or surprise a group of people in a free-for-all by popping up and hitting them all. But it wouldn't be invincible, an opponent could rock, paper, scissors it, or dodge it and punish the end lag. Other than that, Vlad can have a mean up strong punch, he can become a tornado, he did do that once, and I'd like him to have a command grab where he shocks you, because he's done that a lot. It's kind of one of his signature things, and it emphasizes he's an experienced fighter. He knows where you're gonna go, he's fought fools like you before. Maybe he can stall in the air once he's got you and decide a direction to toss you after he grabs you, kind of like Superman in Multiverses. And maybe this can just be how his grab works in the air rather than a designated move. And if you press the special button while grabbing someone like this, then instead of throwing them in a direction, you just zap them and they get launched forward a bit. And not to over-explain, but instead of having to make a unique animation for everyone getting choked or held by their hand, Vlad can just hold the opponent forward with a vague ghost power, like Mewtwo with his psychic stuff or something. He can also swing swords, he can use certain ghost artifacts, he can use his own scientific equipment for more. He can also overshadow people, which is what they call possession, and I don't know how to translate that without it being too good or awkward. Maybe y'all can think of a way, but I don't know. He also does duplicate himself a lot, so that could be something. The concept has been explored with characters like Forsburn and Rivals of Aether. This could make for some neat moves or mechanics or whatever, but if it just doesn't work out, maybe the skill could be relegated to like a victory pose or something. All in all, I like his voice, his pompous attitude, his design, his history in the series, his disregard for others. I think Vlad can do a lot of cool things, would be super fun, and is a fantastic option for this series. For more Danny Phantom potential, options include Ember McLean. She's another rock star, but her main thing is that she's shown to be able to change the settings on her guitar to add different effects to her sound waves. So you could build a moveset that allows the player to choose between a variety of different effects on her moves. Some effects Ember could choose to apply to herself could be stronger but slower hits, faster but weaker hits, major stunning on some moves, burn effects that deal lower initial damage on moves but slowly climb for some time, reverse knockback on your moves, an effect where some moves switch Ember's place with whoever she hits. You could get weird with this. Another option, a buddy Paris says they like Technus a bunch. Technus is an electric ghost guy. He was playable in Globs of Doom and had some fun moves there. You could do stuff with this. I can see him setting stuff up on stage, some zappy ghosty stuff. He could place 2 of them wherever, and when activated, things could carry a bolt of electricity between them, popping opponents up for whatever. I think that'd be fun. This guy could do plenty. Electric stuff and ghost stuff is a great mix. Then there's the ghost hunting ghost in a mech Skulker. He's got blasters, nets to trap people in, things that stun you, things that restrain or restrict you, he can fly, and he's got a generally bigger, heavier build, so ramming into you would be pretty rough. Since he is a hunter, I would definitely try to build him with a mix of traps and rushdown. He should be good at restraining his opponents, but also at chasing them down when he has to. Him and Technus actually combine their powers in the dark future shown in the episode The Ultimate Enemy to become Skulk Tech 9.9. This team-up could potentially be a fighter on their own, but I could also see this as a variant of Skulker by sharing the same moveset but simply adding electric effects to moves, and new voice lines with Technus chiming in. There are a few other ghost hunters in the show, and I think one that could make a pretty cool fighter here is Valerie Gray. After ghosts start messing with her and her dad's life, she takes on a secret identity to go around hunting them. She's really inexperienced at first, wobbling on her cool signature hoverboard, but in The Ultimate Enemy in that dark future, she's the main protector of Amity Park with a lot more skill using grenades, bazookas, and her classic hoverboard. You could make a risk-reward younger Valerie that might tumble off her own hoverboard, but for me, personally, I prefer this bad future Valerie as a fighter for Nick Brawl. I imagine after some startup, she could shoot a bazooka across the stage, kinda like Violet's fully charged arrow, and call her hoverboard to her as a rideable platform. Maybe it could be her up special, and like how Patrick has a bit of time to decide what direction to fly in, Valerie could have a bit of time to decide where her hoverboard should come from and in what direction it should hover. So you could go up, across the stage, or even call it to descend diagonally down so you can really make sure your opponents are finished. But you know, it doesn't last too long, she can only use 1 per airtime, and opponents can use her platform too, so it's not like overpowered and stuff. I imagine all her projectiles, including the bazooka, would still be reflectable and grabbable too. You wouldn't want too strong a zoner. She could be really fun and still slam you with that bazooka up close too. A moveset like this could invite another ghost hunter with a similar build as a variant, that being Danny Phantom's mom, Maddie Fenton. While calling the hoverboard might look a little weird just cause that's so Valerie's thing, if you slap a Fenton logo on it should be fine. Bazooka, grenades, and any other ghost hunting equipment, that all fits Maddie fine. I think you could reasonably get 2 for the price of 1 here. Now, who Valerie is mainly protecting Amity Park from is another cool option. In this bad future, there exists a bad future Danny Phantom known as Dan Phantom, or commonly Dark Danny. Without getting too into his sad and interesting history, Dark Danny is the accidental combination of Danny and Vlad's ghost halves. He is consciously Danny, but with the additional powers and evil of Vlad. And as in this future, Danny's friends and family are gone, and Dark Danny has permanently ended the existence of his human half, there is little to no hope for good left in him. He exists now seemingly only to haunt the world and spread suffering. Seems like a cool character to put in this fighting game. I was wondering if Danny could have any variants, and as Dark Danny has been used as a costume for him in the console version of Attack of the Toybots, I considered him. But like, you tell me, I don't think this costume works, it looks weird. Dark Danny is simply too tall. Sizing him down to fit as a variant for Danny, that's a stretch. But as a mix of Danny and Vlad, he actually looks like the right size to be a variant for Vlad. And that makes a lot of sense. Dark Danny has the powers of both Danny and Vlad, and he's a scary villain, so he should be doing the more scary, experienced powers anyway. I think this is a pretty interesting and flexible situation. Like, he could be a semi-clone with Vlad and Danny moves. The ghostly whale Danny uses in Nick Brawl did originate with Dark Danny. But he could also be original, have his own distinct playstyle, and use Vlad and Danny's powers in new ways. Or he could totally get in as a super cool variant for Vlad. Right now, I think my vote's for a Crom situation, where he's mostly a variant for Vlad, but one move is replaced with Danny's ghostly whale. Yeah, that's great, that would be super cool. Then I thought more about Danny variants, and I thought of Danny Phantom, or Danielle Phantom. She's cool from what I remember, but she has the opposite problem. She's too short. Sizing her up to fit Danny, that's a stretch. Maybe she could get in on her own or something, but for Danny variants, not that we must have one. I did find an answer when I saw there was an episode where Danny's friend Tucker got a bit jealous of Danny, and thanks to Genie Ghost Desiree, magically wishes to also have ghost powers just like Danny. I don't love this option. This angle doesn't show off Tucker's typically supportive personality or skill with technology. It just makes him look like a jealous copycat. But this episode an option exists, so I figured I'd mention it. Tucker Phantom could be a variant of Danny Phantom. A cool stage that combines lab vibes with homie vibes is the Fenton Lab. I remember escaping the ghost zone prison in Nicktoons Unite and winding up here, like phew, glad we made it out of that one, team. This place is where the show's intro starts and where Danny and his friends sometimes hang out or plan solutions. I'm sentimental about this stage, and it could have a fun layout with all sorts of different Fenton ghost hunting inventions as platforms or stage hazards. That iconic portal where Danny got his powers in the back could malfunction and invite some generic ghost enemies to come through and join the fight. Beaten in 1 or 2 hits, but still, maybe landing hits on people, maybe getting hit by a projectile that was meant for an opponent opponent, mixing things up and making fun moments. We could also fight in that bad future Amity Park, home to Valerie and Dark Danny. Ruined buildings all around, a hopeless atmosphere. This could be a simple stage to visit when you want to fight somewhere where it feels like it's already too late. I would also love to fight in Vlad's study. Bunch of books and pillars around here in this dark castle, the first place Vlad and Danny ever fought, the place they fight in that kinda secret boss battle in the GBA game I played as a kid. I tried to draw it as a simple flat stage. Maybe this chandelier could be a stage hazard, or not. Maybe the main platform's floating with vague ghost energy, or with this pillar you can get stage spikes off of. However this would specifically work. I like the vibes here and I think it could make for a really fun stage. As for any other characters from series already represented, there's Jimmy Neutron. And Globs of Doom DS, he had a set amount of fuel on his jetpack, but as long as he had fuel, he could stay in the air for a while. He could do this here too. I can imagine this leading to fun little mind games, chances to outsmart people. He could ride a rocket really quick while saying "Gotta blast" for a strong dash attack, and it could also be a fun neutral special to use the Super Bubblegum Mobile. This is from his movie, and I'm thinking if you stand still and press the special button, then you just start lightly bouncing in place, but when you start inputting directions, you start bouncing there, and the more you hold, the more momentum you got, and you can bounce off a wall and switch directions and keep zooming. The way the game is built to not have side specials for more control on neutral specials also lets the player, if this was a move, run and then hit special and bounce with momentum already built. And Jimmy could strike smugger, goofy poses with every bounce. Lastly, I'd like Jimmy to have a Brain Blast move. And I imagine that being a move you can hold in the air, keep your momentum, think, and just when the moment's right, Brain Blast! Anyone next to Jimmy's big head gets hit with a ton of oomph. Jimmy's lab could make for another fun lab stage, and it's an important place. For games like Nicktoons Unite or Nicktoons Freeze Frame Frenzy, this was the home base for the heroes. Personally, I think I'd love to see the candy bar as a stage. I imagine the stage being the street in front of it, or some platforms floating in front of it. I think there'd be a cool vibe here. Not fitting for like grand finals, but bright, communal, everyone hanging out. There could be a night variation too. I think that'd give off a cute vibe of like people getting together to watch fireworks or something. And okay, just a couple more quick little straggling ideas and that should do it for this part. For Rugrats, personally, I don't really want to fight any of these babies and I don't see anything unique or interesting about their grown-up versions, but I still see people suggest them and they are Nickelodeon icons. I've seen some ideas and I think my personal favorite way to implement them is that maybe the babies could all pilot a Reptar wagon. They could all be in there at the same time, or they could be variants of each other like Bowser Jr. and the Koopalings in Smash. Rugrats could get another stage too, like Toy Palace. In the show it's a toy store, and Nick Kart Racers 2 turned it into a racetrack by shrinking the players down. A good idea that I think could be used here too. From the Garfield series, Nermal seems like a plausible variant. I don't know much about Garfield, but Buddy's told me about Nermal, and aw, this little guy's like Garfield, and he's got cute little eyelashes. Yeah, he could be a variant, why not? Also, Data Mining was able to experiment with an earlier version of our Garfield stage, Sweet Dreams, and this earlier version is also pretty. It's brighter, and while in the end a more nighttime version of the stage is more appropriate, I think both versions are really pretty and it would be cool to implement this as a variant so we can play on both. Similarly, I love Traffic Jam, it's one of my favorite stages, but I'd also like to ride around Hillwood City at night. It'd be more reminiscent of the Hey Arnold intro this way too. Alright, that'll about do it for this part. I gotta cut things off here, because when I tried making everything one video, my computer did not like that. It started talking about drivers, and whatever, it's fine now, it's just, this has gotta be 3 parts. So far, we've talked about character and stage ideas from series already represented in Nickelodeon Brawl. Next time, we'll look at series not represented yet, and alternate costumes. I'm gonna want to talk about alts a bit in the next one too, yeah. And then part 3 will be like about modes and whatever, other stuff. So, if you found this enjoyable and you actually want to hear me ramble on and on more about all this stuff, I guess I got more for you, and I guess I'll see you soon. Thanks, wish y'all well, and see you later.